Chapter 1, The Great Controversy. The Big Picture. The Bible makes the declaration, God is love. Note 14, 1 John 4:8 and 16. And note, the Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works. The Lord is righteous in all his ways, gracious in all his works. Note 15, Psalm 145:8 and 17. NKJ. And note, but many people question the truthfulness of these statements. And it is not only outright infidels and cynics who distrust God. Many thoughtful people have asked, why was suffering permitted? Why does God allow bad things to happen? If he controls everything, why does he allow evil to exist? Tragedies they have experienced or witnessed have led them to view God as either cruel, insensitive, unaware, or even non-existent. The question is legitimate. If he controls everything, why does he allow evil to exist? These vital questions are often answered with the blanket cop-out, it's God's will. We must have faith, or even, you can't understand God's wisdom. How dare you question God? After a tragedy or death, the unconsoling God is testing you, or God took him as many times all that the grieving are left with. If God arbitrarily dictates each event on the earth as is commonly believed, randomly deciding who lives and who dies, who will suffer and who will prosper, then there truly is little reason to trust him. Worse than this, for the last 2 millennia many have used the doctrines of the frightening end of the world and an eternally burning hell to scare people into submission. They say, God is very good, and he wants you to love him, but he is also just. If you choose to not love and obey him, he will have to punish you, even painfully destroy you. Is God a schizophrenic monarch who says, love me, or I'll torture you to death, or worse, love me, or I'll burn you for eternity? That makes no sense whatsoever. If God is an arbitrary and capricious monarch, then we would be right to be afraid of him. Christians have not really been able to fully answer these questions. While many have attempted to offer answers, the typical responses are not satisfactory, especially when asked to explain why God has waited so long to deal with the problem of suffering and death. Is this the way God designed the universe, with death as a normal part of life, suffering to be equally expected with happiness? Is this all part of his original plan? If not, what went wrong, and why hasn't he dealt with the problem? Furthermore, if Jesus came to set things right, why are we still in this mess 2,000 years after his coming, death, and resurrection? There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Note 16, Hamlet, by William Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 5. And note, these words can be truthfully addressed to the vast majority of Christians, who have taken a very narrow view of the problem God is dealing with in his universe. The answers have been in our hands all along, right in the Bible. The Bible has definite answers to these questions, but a superficial and narrow view cannot answer these questions. It is impossible to find the answers unless a larger view, a much larger view, of the problem and its solution is seen. Beyond in the beginning. If you were to go to a theater and start watching in the middle of the movie, you would not really understand the film, and certain scenes would not make sense. Sometimes, the plot of the entire movie is set in the first few minutes. Only if you go back to the beginning will you understand what it's really all about. In a very similar manner, most people's understanding of God and the existence of and solution to sin and suffering is based on only certain scenes of a movie they've started halfway through. The way in which people have read the Bible and sought answers has actually hindered them from seeing the message God was trying to convey. By following Jesus' example of seeking answers by going back to the beginning, we will find that the rest becomes clear and simple to understand. But we need to go back far enough. Note 17, see Matthew 19, 1-6, especially verses 4 and 5. And note, God tried to impress on a man named Job, who had suffered tremendously, the fact that he is dealing with a problem much bigger than that of human suffering. He is dealing with something that has gone terribly wrong, a cosmic conflict that involves the security and very existence of the entire universe. Note 18, see Job chapters 38-42. Endnote. It is only by putting all the events and tragedies of human history in the setting of this larger view that we can gain an understanding of how God has dealt with the sin problem. The Bible is like the TV game show Jeopardy! It gives us all the answers, but we need to match the right questions. We are not alone. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky shows His handiwork. Note 19, Psalm 19:1. Endnote. As time passes and scientific knowledge increases, we are made increasingly aware of our true size in the universe. The human mind cannot truly fathom it. Our little world is one of 8 planets that orbit a small star we call the Sun. Yet this Sun is only one of 400 billion other stars in our galaxy alone. At this point we'll pause in order to try to illustrate the difference between a million and a billion. We understand that a million is a lot, but the difference between a million and a billion is fantastic. For example, if you were to take a 1 million second vacation, you would be gone for approximately 11 days. However, if you took a 1 billion second vacation, you would be gone for 32 years. In other words, if you started counting, and said one number every second, it would take you 32 years to count to 1 billion. Clearly, 1 billion is an incredibly large number. So, we live on a small planet that circles a small star that is only one of 400 billion other stars that make up our galaxy. But our galaxy is only one of at least 200 billion other galaxies in the known universe. A baby thinks the whole world revolves around him and his wants and needs, and extends only as far as his playpen. As he matures, he begins to realize that there are other playpens across the street, in other towns, even in other countries. Mankind and its religion have been extremely egocentric in their estimation of their place in the universe. It is as if you were standing in an area the size of 8 football fields, up to your waist in rice, with each grain of rice representing a star, and then took a single grain and said, "This is the only one that has any meaning." It is vain, unreasonable and egotistic to believe that the entire universe is all about us. Our small world in a tiny corner of the universe is a mere 6,000 years old. Surely the eternal God did not begin creation with our solar system. In the immeasurable eons of time past, innumerable worlds with intelligent life must have surely preceded us. While the scriptures do not elaborate on this point, they certainly do not eliminate the notion of the existence of other worlds, but instead give us extremely strong indication that our little world is but one of untold worlds in God's vast creation. The Bible speaks of the worlds that God made, note 20, Hebrews 1:2, KJV. Endnote. And often refers to incredibly vast numbers of intelligences called angels. The prophet Daniel, in Daniel 7 verse 10, tells us that 100 million stand before God as He conducts the business of the universe. Note 21, a prophet is someone who gives us messages directly from God. The word means one who speaks for God. Of course, simply because someone claims to be a prophet does not mean they are. There are false prophets who actually misrepresent God. See Appendix 5 for a quick study on how to recognize true prophets of God. Endnote. The actual figure is most likely much greater, for Hebrews 12:22 says there are an innumerable company of angels, 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands might simply be the way God expressed it in human terms back in Daniel's time. When the book of Job describes these great meetings, it calls those in attendance the sons of God. Note 22, Job 1:6-7, and note. Luke gives us a clue as to who these sons of God are. He tells us that Adam, the first man, who was given dominion of the earth and thus represented our world, was the Son of God. Note 24, see Genesis 1:28. This verse along with the context of Job chapter 1 indicates that each of these sons of God is a representative of an entire populated world. Endnote. If Adam, the Son of God, was the first ruler of our world, these other sons of God mentioned in the book of Job must be the heavenly rulers, authorities, powers, and lords that the Apostle Paul speaks of. Note 25, Ephesians 1:21 today's English version. Endnote. An apostle is someone who has been sent by God with a specific mission, Called an emissary in modern language. Jesus personally trained 12 men as his core students to spread his message after his resurrection and return to heaven. Later, Paul was also specially chosen by Jesus. Paul wrote a good portion of the New Testament. Thus, we are not talking about X-Files or Star Trek type aliens, but sons of God like Adam and his offspring. And they all worship God as the great creator of the vast universe. Note 28, see Nehemiah 9:6. And note,